What if I told you that the pursuit of becoming a better version of yourself is one of the biggest lies you've been sold? Think about it. All those books you read and habits you try are built on the promise that you can completely reinvent yourself. Hmm. But is that actually possible? Or are we just hoping for a transformation that never really happens? Here's the truth: complete self reinvention may be a myth. The answer might have more to do with your nature than you think. If you've ever wondered why real, lasting change seems just out of reach, you're not alone. Welcome to the Psychology IQ podcast. This one's about why self improvement feels like it's going nowhere sometimes, and what might actually be going on underneath. Why self improvement feels like running in circles. Self improvement can feel like a never ending cycle. You buy the books, try new habits, and for a while things seem different. But then, after a few weeks or months, you start to wonder, have I actually changed, or was it just a temporary boost? Many people report feeling stuck even after trying popular self help methods. As the excitement fades, old patterns return, and it's easy to feel like you're chasing your tail. So, what's really going on beneath the surface? The core promise of the self improvement industry is that you can completely reinvent yourself if you just work hard enough. It's a comforting idea. If you're not happy with who you are, you can become someone else, more successful, more confident, more disciplined. The routines and habits give you a sense of progress. You feel productive, maybe even inspired, but it rarely lasts. Before long, you slip back into familiar routines and start to feel like nothing's really changed at all. One big reason for this cycle is that so much of who you are is shaped by factors outside your control: your biology, your genetics, your basic wiring. For example, if you've ever noticed that some people bounce back from setbacks easily while others get stuck in self doubt, or that some people seem naturally cheerful while others have to work for every bit of happiness, there's a reason for that. Studies show that about 50% of your overall happiness is set by genetics. This set point means that no matter what happens, people tend to drift back to a certain baseline level of happiness over time. You can influence it, but there are limits. Personality traits like how impulsive or cautious you are, or how outgoing or reserved, also have a strong genetic component. They're not entirely fixed, but they aren't completely flexible either. E.O. Wilson, a well-known evolutionary biologist, argued that much of human behavior is biologically programmed. He compared our choices to, moves on a chessboard. You can move pieces around, but the board itself, your genetic code, sets the boundaries. You can make changes within those limits, but you can't break the rules of the game. That's why self-improvement often feels like running on a treadmill. You're working hard, but the belt keeps moving at the same pace, and you end up in the same spot. Let's take happiness as a concrete example. You might chase happiness through promotions, new relationships, or the latest self-help trend. These things can boost your mood for a while, but eventually you return to your baseline. That doesn't mean you're not trying hard enough. It's not just a lack of effort. Your inherited wiring plays a big role. When you realize that, it becomes clear why progress can feel so slow, even when you're doing everything right. That this can be frustrating. You spend months meditating, journaling, or practicing new habits, but you still feel anxious in social situations or procrastinate when faced with big tasks. The self improvement industry often tells you to try harder or buy another program, but what they rarely mention is that some patterns are deeply rooted. There's no simple fix because you're not just dealing with surface level habits, you're working with the building blocks of who you are. It's like trying to run faster on a treadmill set to a fixed speed. You put in more effort, but you're getting anywhere. I felt after a while it's exhausting, not because, you're lazy or incapable, but because you're working against built-in limits. This leads to self-blame. You start to wonder, why can't I get it together? Why am I not disciplined enough? The frustration isn't just about lack of progress. It's about feeling like you're failing at something that's supposed to be possible. But maybe the real problem isn't you. Maybe the expectation of total transformation is flawed. The idea that you can completely rewrite your personality, reshape your tendencies, and become a new you sounds appealing. But it often doesn't line up with reality. The problem isn't a lack of dedication, it's the promise itself. Thinking you can become someone entirely different is what keeps you running in circles. So, if true transformation is out of reach, what does real change look like? Maybe it's not about forcing yourself into a new mold, but about understanding what you already have. There might be a different way to think about growth, one that doesn't set you up for disappointment, but helps you work with your own nature instead of against it. What nature can teach us about change. The way nature handles change gives us a different perspective. In the natural world, change isn't about radical transformation. It's about unfolding what's already there. Look at a lion cub. As it grows, it doesn't become a different animal. It doesn't turn into a cheetah or a leopard. It just becomes a fully grown lion. What changes is its size, its strength, its mane. All of those things were already set in motion from birth, coded into its DNA. The cub's development is about maturing into the lion it was always meant to be, not about forcing itself into a completely new form. The same principle shows up in other parts of nature. A frog starts as a tadpole, living in the water, breathing through gills. Over time, it grows legs and lungs and moves onto land, but even when it looks different, the essence of the frog was always there. The process isn't about swapping one identity for another. It's about the gradual realization of potential. This is biological unfolding, not transformation. Just as your height is determined by your genes and won't suddenly change in adulthood, your core traits tend to unfold rather than shift dramatically. Nature's approach stands in sharp contrast to the usual self improvement advice. We're told to reinvent ourselves, to chase after some ideal version that may not have much to do with who we actually are. The message is that if you work hard enough, you can become anyone. But if you look at how living things grow, the story is different. Growth isn't about becoming something new, it's about becoming more of what you already are. Philosophers have wrestled with this idea for centuries. There's a perspective, especially in the work of Schopenhauer, that says character is largely fixed. He argued that your basic nature doesn't transform no matter how much you try to change it. Instead, life serves to reveal your character, to let it unfold through your experiences. You can adapt, you can learn new skills, but the core of who you are, the way you react under pressure, your deepest preferences, your natural strengths, remains steady. Where Schopenhauer didn't say this to discourage growth, but to point out that the story of your life is about discovering and refining what's already there, not writing a completely new script. If you look at your own life, you can probably see this pattern. Maybe you've noticed that certain strengths or tendencies have been with you since childhood. Maybe you're naturally analytical, or you've always been drawn to creative work. Even when you try to change your style, you end up circling back to these core traits. It's not that you can't grow or improve, but the direction of your growth is shaped by your starting point. Just like an acorn can only become an oak tree, your potential unfolds along certain lines. You can nurture it, you can help it reach its best version, but you can't force it to become something it's not. No, this isn't just an abstract idea. There's a practical side to it. Chasing after a version of yourself that doesn't fit your nature is draining. It's like planting an acorn and expecting a rose bush to grow. No matter how much you water it or how much sunlight it gets, it's never going to be anything but an oak. The more you focus on what you're not, the more you ignore the strengths you could actually be developing. Instead of trying to become someone else, it makes more sense to ask, what's already here? what qualities can I sharpen and refine? That doesn't mean you should settle or stop trying to improve. Growth is real, but it's about working with what's already in you. When you focus on refining your natural strengths and understanding your limits, progress feels less like an uphill battle. You're not wasting energy fighting your own wiring. You're making the most of what you have. Some people worry that this means giving up on change, but that's not the point. The point is that growth is a process of repetition and refinement, not reinvention. You don't need to become a new person. You need to practice, to repeat, to sharpen the qualities that are already part of you. That's how nature works, and it's how real progress happens for us too. So if you've been caught up in the idea that you need a complete overhaul, it might be time to look at growth differently, because the real secret isn't about dramatic change. It's about doing the right things again and again until your strengths become second nature. Why growth is about repetition, not reinvention. When you look at how real growth happens, it's not about chasing dramatic reinvention. It's about the steady, sometimes tedious process of doing the same thing with intention over and over. This goes against what we're usually sold, the idea that a single breakthrough or new identity will change everything. But the reality is, most progress comes from repetition and refinement, not from starting over as someone new. Think about Steph Curry. Everyone sees him hitting impossible shots and breaking records, but what they don't see are the thousands of hours he spent practicing the same moves, the same shots, again and again. His mastery didn't come from a sudden leap or a radical change in who he was. It came from relentless repetition, shooting until the movement was automatic, tweaking his form and building on what he already did well. The talent was there, but it was the practice, the small adjustments, and the willingness to repeat the basics that turned him into the player we know today. Mastery doesn't show up overnight. It's the result of countless, almost invisible steps that accumulate over years. This isn't just about sports, it's the same in any field. Skill development is about building on what's already inside you, shaping it through consistent effort. The world loves stories of overnight success, but if you look closer, you'll find years of quiet work behind every big achievement. The people who reach the top aren't reinventing themselves every few months. They're focused on sharpening what they already have, making tiny improvements, and sticking with it long after everyone else has moved on to something new. Philosophy backs this up too. Nietzsche talked about becoming who you are. At first, it sounds strange. How can you become what you already are? But he meant that most people spend their lives trying to fit into roles or expectations that don't match their true selves. Growth, in his view, is about removing what doesn't fit and letting your real strengths come forward. It's a process of stripping away, not layering on something foreign. You don't become a new person, you become a clearer, more precise version of yourself. And a good way to picture this is to imagine sharpening a blade. You're not trying to turn a knife into a hammer or a saw. You're taking what's already there and making it better, bit by bit. Each round of sharpening is like another round of practice or repetition. It's not flashy. No one celebrates the hours spent quietly honing an edge, but that's where the real progress happens. The same goes for your own growth. You're not meant to swap out your core traits or chase after someone else's strengths. You're meant to focus on what's already there, making it stronger and more effective through repetition. Here's why this matters. So many people get stuck chasing reinvention. They try to overhaul everything about themselves, thinking that if they just change enough, they'll finally get the results they want. But most of the time, this leads to frustration. When you don't see instant results, it's easy to think you're failing or that you need to try something completely different. The truth is, the world doesn't reward short bursts of inspiration. It rewards the people who keep showing up, who keep working on the same things, and who are willing to stick with the process even when it feels slow. Repetition isn't glamorous. It can feel dull and sometimes pointless. Progress is slow, And it's tempting to believe that a big change would fix everything. But chasing constant reinvention is what keeps most people spinning their wheels. They never stick with one thing long enough to see real improvement. The people who make real progress are the ones who figure out what matters most for them and then put their energy into repeating and refining those things. So, how do you know what's worth repeating? It starts with understanding your own nature. Look for the patterns in your life where you've naturally done well, what comes easiest, and what feels most rewarding. Focus your effort on sharpening those traits. You don't need to master everything or force yourself to be someone you're not. Growth comes from working with your strengths, not against them. But there's a catch. Even when you're focused and consistent, it's easy to push too hard, to try to force progress beyond your limits. That's where things can start to go wrong. When you ignore your natural boundaries and keep fighting to become someone you're not, you risk burning out or ending up frustrated. And that leads to a whole different kind of struggle. The cost of fighting your nature. Pushing too far against your nature can backfire, leaving you drained. We've all heard that hard work conquers all, but there's a point where effort stops being productive and starts working against you. When you try to force yourself into a role or personality that doesn't fit, the cost isn't just wasted time. It's a slow buildup of frustration, disappointment, and exhaustion. Let's look at the mango seed analogy. No matter how much you water or fertilize a mango seed, you can't turn it into an orange tree. The genetic code inside that seed sets the limits: what fruit it can bear, how it grows, even what it looks like. You might wish for something different, but biology doesn't bend to willpower. The same thing is true for us. Our personalities, talents, and even our weaknesses have roots in our biology. You can nurture what's already there, but you can't force something completely different to grow. Trying to do so just sets you up for disappointment. This shows up in real life all the time. Someone with a natural talent for creative thinking might feel pressured to take a job that's all about strict routines and numbers because that's what's seen as safe or successful. Or maybe a quiet, reflective person tries to force themselves into an outgoing, high energy role because that's what gets attention. Well, sure, you can stretch your comfort zone, but if you keep pushing in a direction that goes against your wiring, every step feels heavier. Progress slows, and you start to wonder if you're even moving forward at all. There's another layer to this: comparison. It's easy to look around and feel like you need to catch up to someone else's version of success. Social media, family expectations, and even casual conversations can make you feel like you're behind if you're not constantly changing or improving yourself. But when you measure your progress against someone else's path, you ignore what actually fits you. The more you chase after what works for others, the more disconnected you feel from your own strengths. The emotional cost of this struggle can be huge. When you keep fighting your nature, picking careers, friendships, or lifestyles that don't fit, you start to internalize a sense of failure. It's not just, this isn't working for me, but maybe I'm not good enough. Over time, this can turn into burnout. You feel tired all the time, lose motivation, and start to dread the things that once excited you. The harder you push, the less progress you make, and the cycle becomes exhausting. Anxiety, self-doubt, and even depression can creep in, not because you lack discipline, but because you're chasing goals that don't match your natural abilities. Carl Jung put it simply: the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That doesn't mean giving up or settling for less. It means shifting your focus from constant self-criticism and unrealistic goals to honest self-acceptance. When you stop trying to be someone else and start working with your actual strengths, the pressure eases. You're no longer wasting energy on impossible tasks. Instead, you can invest in what you do best, and that's where real growth happens. Accepting your nature isn't about resignation. It's an active process, taking stock of your real strengths, your patterns, and even your limits. When you know where your talents lie, you can focus your energy in the right places. You stop pouring effort into battles you were never meant to fight. It's like finally planting that mango seed in the right soil and letting it become what it's meant to be. You get more out of your effort and you start to see real progress. This shift doesn't mean you stop growing. It just means you grow in the right direction. When you align your goals and your work with who you really are, things get clearer. You start to feel more capable, more at ease, and more satisfied with your progress, even if it's slower or looks different from someone else's. The noise of constant comparison fades, and you can, focus on what matters most for you. But there's another piece to all of this. Even when you accept your nature and work with it, there's still the question of happiness. Why does it seem that the more we chase happiness, the further away it gets? That's a paradox almost everyone runs into at some point. The happiness paradox. There's a strange thing that happens when you make happiness your main goal. The harder you try to pin it down, the more it slips away. This is what psychologists call the happiness paradox. It's not just a philosophical idea, there's real science behind it. Our brains aren't built to hold on to happiness for long stretches. We get a taste of it, but then it fades and we're left wanting more. That's not a flaw, it's biology. Let's break it down. Every time something good happens, a win at work, a new relationship, a big purchase, your brain gives you a hit of dopamine. That's the rush that feels so good in the moment, but it doesn't last. Pretty soon, your brain resets. What once felt amazing becomes your new normal. This process is called hedonic adaptation. Psychologists like Brickman found that even lottery winners, after a few months, return to their usual set point of happiness. The same goes for people who face setbacks. Whether life hands you something great or something tough, you tend to drift back to your baseline. Think about your own life. You finally get something you've been working toward, a promotion, a new house, a personal best in the gym. For a while, there's a real sense of satisfaction, but then almost without noticing, that feeling fades. You start looking for the next thing. This cycle of striving, achieving, and adapting is built into us. It kept our ancestors moving forward, always looking for the next opportunity or resource. But in today's world, it can leave you feeling like nothing is ever enough. The research goes even deeper. Studies show that people who put the highest value on happiness often end up the least happy. It sounds backwards, but it's true. When you treat happiness like a finish line, you set yourself up for disappointment. You create an ideal in your head, and when real life doesn't measure up, the gap feels huge. You start to wonder if something's wrong with you, or if you're just not trying hard enough. The pressure builds, and happiness feels even further out of reach. This isn't just about personal goals. You see it everywhere. People chasing status, money, or recognition, all thinking these things will bring lasting happiness. But as soon as one goal is reached, a new one takes its place. The satisfaction never sticks around. Kasser and Ryan's work shows that people who focus on external achievements end up less satisfied than those who put energy into relationships, personal growth, or meaningful work. When you chase happiness through things outside yourself, you end up on a treadmill that never stops. There's another way to look at it. Happiness isn't something you can grab and hold on to. It's more like a butterfly. Try to catch it, and it flutters just out of reach. But if you focus on what matters to you, live in line with your values, and pay attention to the moments that feel right, happiness sometimes lands when you least expect it. The irony is, the less you chase it, the more likely it is to show up. So what actually works? Instead of making happiness the goal, shift your focus to contentment and authenticity. Contentment isn't about settling or giving up. It's about finding satisfaction in where you are, who you are, and what you already have. It's quieter than happiness, but it's more stable. When you stop comparing yourself to others or reaching for the next big thing, you start to notice the good that's already there. Living authentically means paying attention to your own strengths and values. It's about doing what feels right to you. No, not what you think should make you happy. Dacey and Ryan's research found that people who focus on intrinsic values, like learning, connecting, and contributing, feel more fulfilled than those who chase external rewards. When you line up your actions with your nature, you create the conditions for happiness to appear naturally without forcing it. None of this means you'll feel great all the time. Life has ups and downs, and that's normal. But when you stop tying your worth to a constant chase for happiness, you free up energy for things that actually matter. You start to see that happiness isn't a destination or a permanent state. It's a byproduct of living well, of being honest about who you are and what you care about. If you let go of the chase and focus on what fits you, you might find that happiness shows up more often and sticks around a little longer. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. And when you stop fighting your own nature, you can finally use your energy for something real. That's where a different kind of freedom begins. What real growth isn't about chasing an ideal or forcing yourself to fit a mold. It's about seeing what's already there and working with it. Psychologist Carl Jung put it simply: the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. His idea wasn't about settling, it was about embracing your own nature and letting your true self guide your choices. So here's something practical you can do right now. Think back to tough times in your life and list 3 strengths you relied on to get through. Start there. The focus on refining those strengths instead of trying to become someone else. That's where real fulfillment begins.